courtroom was buzzing with the kind of energy you only feel before something unforgettable happens. Cameras zoomed in, panelists straightened their ties, and then Jessica Tarlov leaned forward, voice smooth but loaded with intent. "Congresswoman Crockett, what made you want to study law?" That was it. A simple question, but in a room addicted to debate and performance, it hit like a thunderclap. The audience shifted, sensing this wasn't just another political sparring session. Tarlov wasn't asking about policy, she was probing the soul. And what came next? It didn't just silence the panel, it shattered the entire courtroom dynamic. Because Jasmine Crockett didn't blink, didn't dodge, didn't deliver a politician's polished line. She inhaled once, softly smiled, and said something no one expected. "You know, Jessica, no one in national media has ever asked me that before." The tone changed instantly. That wasn't strategy, that was truth. And when truth walks into a courtroom full of performers, it burns through the script like fire through paper. She began slow, almost hesitant, as if revisiting a wound she hadn't touched in years. "When I was 14, she said, my uncle Marcus was arrested for a crime he didn't commit." The sound in the room vanished. No murmurs, no camera clicks, just that single line floating in the air like a verdict no one saw coming. And then she told them what happened. A wrongful arrest based on mistaken identity, a system that didn't care to check twice, and a family that couldn't afford to fight back. Why did it matter? Because it wasn't just about Marcus, it was about every family like hers that learned too late how justice depends on your wallet. Who was involved? A tired public defender juggling 80 cases, a prosecutor chasing stats, a police department eager to close the file. How did it unfold? Fast, too fast. Marcus was booked, processed, and jailed within 72 hours. Where? Dallas County, a courtroom that never once looked her uncle in the eyes. She said he spent 8 months behind bars. 8 months, long enough to lose his job, his apartment, his faith in fairness. The real criminal was caught months later and the system just shrugged. Case closed. No apology, no compensation, just silence. Crockett's voice cracked for half a second when she said that word, silence, and that's when even Jessica Tarlov stopped taking notes. You could practically hear the audience exhale in disbelief, but Crockett didn't stop there. She pivoted gracefully, powerfully from pain to purpose. She said she used to dream of becoming president, not out of ambition but desperation. She thought power meant rewriting the rules. But then her grandmother sat her down, a woman with an 8th grade education but more wisdom than half the Congress combined, and told her something that changed her life forever. "Baby, before you can change the rules, you gotta understand them first." That line didn't just land, it hit like a gavel strike that echoed through every home watching. That was the why. That's why Jasmine Crockett went to law school, not for prestige, not for politics, but because she wanted to know the very system that broke her family. To learn its language, its loopholes, its pressure points, so no one could ever do to another Marcus what was done to hers. But the twist, the courtroom didn't see it coming. Tarlov leaned forward, eyes soft now, almost whispering, "Did you ever get justice for him?" Crockett paused, then looked up with a calm smile. "Justice? No, but I learned something more valuable, how to fight smarter next time." That line, that was the moment she became the hero. She painted her grandmother as the cornerstone of her story. A woman who raised her with firm hands and gentle conviction, who'd say things like, "You don't need a fancy title to make change, you just need guts and a good plan." But then came the part that broke everyone's composure. Her grandmother died of pancreatic cancer during Crockett's second year of college, and on her deathbed, Crockett made a promise to finish law school, become an attorney, and fight for people failed by the system. The audience was locked in, not because of drama but because this wasn't performance. It was confession dressed in courage. She told them she used to think the world needed one big change, a sweeping reform or a revolution. But after years in courtrooms defending single mothers who couldn't afford daycare or young men turned away from jobs because of old mistakes, she realized something deeper. Helping one person at a time is powerful, but fixing the system itself, that's liberation. That's what pushed her into politics, why she ran, who she wanted to represent, the unseen, unheard, and underestimated. How she approached it with the same precision she used in the courtroom, case by case, bill by bill, when she decided to run right after winning a case for a young mother denied housing due to an old misdemeanor, where she announced it, a community center named after her grandmother. And when she said, "Every law I fight for is inspired by a face I've met," it wasn't rhetoric, it was legacy. You could feel the audience leaning forward as if they wanted to remember every word. But here, where it gets even more fascinating, the villain of the room wasn't Jessica. She wasn't attacking, she was genuinely curious. The villain, if you could call it that, was the cynicism of the system itself, the part of politics that feeds on detachment, that trains leaders to never sound too human. Crockett obliterated that in one sitting. Then she smiled, that kind of smile you see on someone who's already been through hell and learned how to walk through it in heels. "I realized law isn't about winning cases, it's about changing odds," she said. The room erupted, not in applause but in stunned silence, the kind that says, "This just got real." And just when everyone thought the moment had peaked, Crockett did what she does best, flipped the script with humor. You know, Jessica, when I was little, I wanted to be a judge so I could tell people to sit down and be quiet, which, honestly, might have been a sign politics was inevitable. The room laughed, tension released, perfect packing. And then she added softly, but when I saw my uncle in those cuffs, it stopped being a dream. It became a mission. That sentence hit harder than any punchline could recover from. Tarlov looked at her, speechless. The conservative commentator on the panel, usually eager to throw a jab, just nodded. Respectfully, sincerely. That's when the magic happened, the courtroom divided by politics suddenly united by humanity. Crockett leaned in slightly, her tone steady, deliberate. People think law is about arguments. It's not. It's about empathy written in legal terms. That was poetry wrapped in fire. The narrator, me, could almost feel the ground shift under that statement. And then, in a line that would soon dominate every headline, she said, "I didn't study law to make a name. I studied law so no one else's uncle would disappear into the system like mine did." Boom, that was the moment. The exact point where emotion turned into electricity. You could practically hear millions of viewers pause mid-scroll, because that wasn't politics, it was truth wearing armor. But what happened next shocked the entire courtroom. Jessica Tarlov, visibly moved, whispered, "Thank you for sharing that." And for the first time in a long time, that panel, famous for fiery crossfire, felt more like a family dinner where someone finally told the truth no one else had the courage to say. And yet, even in that calm, Crockett wasn't done. "We keep pretending justice is blind," she said. "But it's not. It sees color, it sees income, it sees everything but accountability. That's why I ran not to fix the law, but to make it see." That's the how she turned personal pain into political purpose. She didn't fight the system by yelling at it, she dissected it like a surgeon. When she decided she was done with the courtroom and ready for Congress, the day she realized her victories were just band-aids on a system bleeding from within. Where she made that decision, standing outside the courthouse, watching another black teenager get denied bail for a petty charge. And that's when she looked directly at the camera, eyes steady, no teleprompter, no hesitation, and said, "The law broke my family once. I won't let it happen to anyone else." Every word after that was a ripple in the ocean of public opinion. Clips spread like wildfire, hashtags lit up, and for once the internet agreed on something: authenticity still wins. But this was only the beginning. The next morning the clip was everywhere. Twitter, YouTube, primetime news. Jasmine Crockett's calm yet fierce monologue about her uncle's wrongful arrest had gone viral. But it wasn't just trending, it was transforming. For once, a political debate didn't ignite outrage, it evoked respect. Millions watched the moment she said, "The law broke my family once, I won't let it happen again." They replayed it like a line from a movie that felt too real to be scripted. And that's when something extraordinary happened. The courtroom of public opinion began to shift. Usually when political clips go viral, the internet divides like oil and water. But this time, people on opposite sides of the aisle were agreeing. Conservatives, liberals, independents, everyone found a piece of themselves in that story. Even the staunch commentator on the panel, who was known for tearing apart emotional testimonies, surprised everyone when he said softly, that was powerful. I may not agree with her politics, but I respect the hell out of that story." And just like that, Crockett had done the impossible. She turned empathy into common ground. The what was her story, the why was her promise. The who was a congresswoman who refused to sound like one, the how she didn't attack, she revealed. The when, in the middle of a debate that was supposed to be combative. And the where, a live national broadcast where vulnerability is usually treated like weakness. But she used it like a weapon. The energy in that courtroom-like studio was unlike anything before. It wasn't a battle of ideologies anymore. It was a masterclass in emotional intelligence. Jessica Tarlov, who started this fire with a simple question, just sat there, visibly moved but professional. "I didn't mean to get personal," she said softly. Crockett smiled. "That's the thing, Jessica, we've made personal sound like a crime. But every law on the books was written because something personal happened to someone once." The audience gasped, then applauded. Another perfect tension loop, serious truth followed by human humor. She chuckled and added, "Honestly, I wish I could charge rent for how many times I've had to explain that." Laughter rippled through the crowd. And then she pivoted again, sharp and precise. "But that's what happens when you let politics become theater. People forget what's real." Now that line, that was her courtroom dagger. You could see even her political opponents nodding slightly, unable to argue. She wasn't debating anymore, she was testifying. That's when the narrator in me realized Crockett wasn't just answering a question. She was redefining the rules of political discourse right there on live television. Most politicians perform, she confessed. Most defend, she disarmed. And that's why her story exploded beyond politics. It felt human. Then came the media response. The following day, every outlet tried to replay and dissect that one moment like it was some hidden code to authenticity. CNN called it a rare glimpse of sincerity in American politics. Fox News ran the headline, "Crockett Gets Real, a Democrat Story Even Conservatives Admire." Late-night hosts turned her grandmother's quote, "understand the rules first," into a viral slogan. You couldn't scroll without seeing edits, captions, reactions, but the most powerful reactions came from ordinary people. A young law student wrote, "I was thinking of dropping out. After watching Crockett's story, I decided to stay. I want to fight like she does." A single mother commented, "She reminded me that policy isn't paperwork, it's people." And someone simply wrote, "Finally, a politician who sounds like us." But of course, no courtroom drama is complete without backlash. Enter the villain, the cynical strategist type. He appeared on another network later that week and sneered, "That was just political theater dressed up as empathy, don't be fooled." He called it manipulation, claimed the timing was strategic. The internet braced for a fight. And Crockett, she didn't dodge, she fired back not with anger but precision. "If telling the truth feels like theater to you," she said, "maybe you've forgotten what honesty looks like." The clip of that line spread even faster than the original, and once again she controlled the narrative not by shouting louder but by being unshakably real. She continued, "You can't fake pain you've lived through. My uncle's record is still public. My grandmother's grave still stands. You can visit both if you doubt me." The silence that followed wasn't weakness, it was dominance. She turned accusation into evidence, skepticism into sympathy. What made it even more powerful was what happened after. Other politicians started opening up too. Senators began sharing personal stories on air. Even commentators who'd once mocked emotional candor began inviting authenticity back into the discussion. Crockett had started a cultural shift without even planning to. She'd made honesty fashionable again. In one follow-up interview, Jessica Tarlov admitted, "I didn't realize I was asking a question that would change the tone of political media. But I'm glad I did," Crockett replied, smiling. That's how truth works, it sneaks in when you least expect it. But the real twist came 2 weeks later. Crockett returned to the same show, same set, same lineup. This time the atmosphere was different, respectful, electric. Even the conservative commentator greeted her with a grin. "I'll admit," he said, "last time you left me speechless. I came prepared today," she laughed. "Then you're already one step ahead of my uncle's lawyer," the audience roared. That's what made her dangerous in the best way possible. She could make a crowd laugh right after making them cry. It wasn't emotional whiplash, it was mastery. Every word, every pause, every smirk was deliberate but never forced. She balanced vulnerability with wit and intellect with fire. That's how she won hearts, not with slogans but with soul. And when asked again why she chose law over pure politics, she gave a line that would later become immortal in political circles. "Because law is where change meets accountability, it's where passion has to prove itself." The crowd erupted. No teleprompter, no cue cards, just conviction. She then added, "When I walk into Congress, I don't see a building, I see a courtroom that owes my uncle a verdict." That was her mic drop moment. Every headline the next day carried that line. The clip reached tens of millions within 48 hours. Hashtags like Crockett Effect and Understand the Rules trended for days. Even her critics, people who'd spent years dismissing her as too outspoken, had to admit she'd elevated the national conversation. The same strategist who'd mocked her earlier appeared on TV again, this time looking almost humbled. "I still disagree with her," he said, "but she's the kind of opponent that makes politics worth watching." And there it was, the full circle. The villain wasn't evil, he was converted by the sheer force of authenticity. The ripple effect continued. High schools played her speech in civics classes. Law professors cited it as an example of narrative advocacy. Even talk shows overseas began referencing the Crockett method, the art of turning personal pain into political philosophy. But in the middle of all that attention, Jasmine Crockett didn't bask in glory. Instead, she posted one quiet message on her social media. "My grandmother said, change doesn't come when you shout the loudest, it comes when you speak the truest. We're just getting started." That post got more likes than her entire campaign announcement. And that's when you realize why this story resonated so deeply. Because it wasn't about a degree, a title, or a position. It was about reclaiming faith in something larger, the belief that empathy can coexist with power, that intelligence doesn't have to sound cold, that law, when wielded by the right hands, can heal instead of harm. In one final public appearance weeks later, she summed it all up with a clarity that silenced even her usual detractors. Standing on a community stage in Dallas, she said, "I didn't become a lawyer to escape my past. I became one to rewrite it." And just like that, the crowd stood up not as Democrats or Republicans, but as believers in what she represented. Jessica Tarlov, watching from the sidelines, smiled quietly. She asked a single question and witnessed a political awakening. And the narrator in me, I couldn't help but think maybe that's how revolutions start. Not with riots, not with campaigns, but with one honest story told at the right moment by someone brave enough to mean it. And that's why, weeks later, when people still replayed that interview, they weren't watching politics. They were watching justice reborn in real time. Because in that courtroom of televised chaos, Jasmine Crockett didn't just win an argument, she won the one verdict that truly matters, the verdict of hearts.